Hello everyone, it's Malacite again, and today we're going to be discussing Khaimera, the latest hero added to Paragon. So today we'll be analyzing his strengths, weaknesses, and how to build the best deck for him. So, that said, let's look at his build. So his primary attack, just regular straight up melee, with his twin axes. His R1, his ambush, which is basically a lock-on stun. You will leap to the target, instantly stunning them and dealing a small amount of damage. This is incredibly useful for chasing down people. I would not recommend using it to initiate a fight unless you're taking down someone who doesn't have an escape ability, because if they do, like something like Fang Mao's teleport or Decker's rocket boots, because if they use that and then ambush is down, you can forget about catching them. And then he has Unleash, which is one of his... It's weird, it's one of his best and at the same time worst skills. Best in that it's insane in the early game, and worst in that it actually gets progressively weaker as the game goes on and you gain more attack speed. Simply because what this ability does is it sets your attack speed to the cap for 5 seconds for your next 5 attacks. Leveling it up reduces the damage penalty. So as you can see here, initially you're reduced to 20%, which basically means you're only dealing 1 normal attack round worth of damage, but through those 5 attacks. The moment it hits level 2 and upward, though, you actually start gaining damage. This is incredibly useful though early on to working in tandem with his passive, the Spirit Regeneration. So basically, every time you land a basic attack on an enemy, you gain a stack of health regeneration for 5 seconds. This is actually hard capped. I'm not sure on the exact number. It's somewhere between 150 and 160 health per second. But that's still pretty nuts. And as you pile on more and more attack speed, you'll hit this cap quicker and quicker, and it essentially allows him to solo the Prime Orb Guardian very early on compared to other heroes, making him extremely beastly. It's actually what makes him one of the best junglers in the game. I don't think he's as good as Grux or Kalari, simply because he cannot use the Stalker's Key, which gives you Lifesteal and 50% damage against jungle minions. And he still does fairly well even without the Beastmaster Key, but I don't recommend using him as a jungler without that specific card. Just because that 50%, even with the health regeneration, at least early on, it's just barely enough. You're probably better off staying in the lanes and letting your Grux or Iggy or whoever take care of the jungle. That said, though, he is still this guy is basically like the Boogeyman of the game. I mean, just look at him. And then we have his ultimate, which is Cull. So this gives there's a short delay to it, and then he knocks everybody around him away except for the target and roots them in place for a second, just long enough for his ult to actually do the damage. The only problem with this ability, though, is it has a fairly lengthy animation lock to it, so actually by the time it's over and you can move again, your opponent will already be moving. This is mainly just to create space between you and them and guarantee the damage. This ability actually does hit fairly hard, and it scales quite well with physical damage. So it's worth leveling up. Just bear in mind that you may have to use ambush after hitting Cull just to make sure your target doesn't escape. So yeah, in a nutshell, Khaimera is basically the duelist of the game. He wants to single out a specific target and just wail on them and outlast them till they're dead. He can even go toe-to-toe with tanks because of his Spirit Regeneration. You just keep beating them and gaining back more health, and like I said, at the higher levels, once you have a lot of attack speed, it really becomes obscene, especially if you throw Lifesteal into the mix. He can be very, very difficult to kill. Typically, if you see an enemy Khaimera, you want to use crowd control to try and keep him away, so that he loses his regeneration stacks, or focus him down with a lot of burst damage. Otherwise, he will outlast and can, in the worst case scenario, probably kill an entire team just by himself if you let him build enough regeneration. Alright, so with that said, let's go over what cards he should be using. Now, my own deck is not ideal, mainly because I'm lacking a lot of the cards I would like. But for the most part, you want to focus on increasing his physical damage and his attack speed. Another card I do highly recommend running Brand of the Iron Eater. I have crit in here just because, like I said, I don't have more drain cards. The crit is really irrelevant here. The main thing here is the Lifesteal. Between his attack with high attack speed and high damage and his regeneration passive, the Lifesteal just adds even more survivability to this guy. He's nuts for this. Incidentally, I do have a Rest Breaker in here, mainly because it adds more base damage. The physical penetration is nice, but Khaimera is actually one of the few physical DPS that doesn't really need penetration, again because of his regeneration passive. The whole point of physical penetration is to go through armor and deal more damage, but because of his regeneration, you have so much survivability that it becomes irrelevant whether you're breaking through their armor or not. Critical hit is not bad for him. The problem with crit builds on him is they're very card dependent. Like if you don't have all like the really good cards to get enough of it cheaply, like efficiently, it just doesn't work out that well. Especially because critical hits don't work on structures like towers at the core or inhibitors at the core. And that's where having more base damage comes in handy, because with enough damage and speed, you can actually just walk right up to a tower. Typically, you have to hit some minions first, right? Like you'll use your Q or square ability, build up stacks of regeneration, and then just run right in and wail on the tower and not even give a rat's ass, because you'll be dealing so much damage so quickly and regenerating health that the tower will be down before you know it. And actually, Epic just announced that there's a patch in their next patch. They're going to be reducing tower damage and making armor more effective against it. So that's going to encourage this even more. One interesting card, though, if you are going to go for the crit build, is potentially Bounty Stalker. This is not a card I personally like too much, just because I find it expensive and it doesn't really do a whole lot. But it does give you a good option of adding in extra health on him while also gaining crit. Which can be very important. I prefer to kind of glass cannon him somewhat and just rely on the regeneration. But it's worth noting that since he has access to growth cards, giving him a ton of health is not a bad idea at all. The reason for this being, because Khaimera is such a threat, you are likely to get focused down in PvP. And so having extra HP to allow you to buy you time to build up those stacks of regeneration can be very helpful. Your primary focus really should be attack speed, following that damage, and then anything else is secondary. Like Lifesteal is very nice supplementary. Crit can be nice if you can make it work. I don't recommend it though. At least not initially. Like maybe if you have if you have a lot of critical wounds and whatnot, then feel free to stack on cards like Brand of the Iron Eater or Impact Hammer. Impact Hammer is another really good crit card because you're getting a lot of damage and crit. Even Spear of the Rift Hunter is pretty good. But your general game plan is going to be to probably lurk in the jungles a bit, even though you're not technically a jungler. It's still a great place to be hiding. Just pop out of nowhere, leap onto somebody, and then just wail on them, scare the bejesus, and before you know it, like everything's. Or even just run the lanes, like just beat on the minions, build up your regeneration stacks, and then close the gap, and just laugh as they try to kill you. All right, so that's it for the Khaimera guide. I'll hopefully have I'll be waiting for the next hero in a couple of weeks and have a guide for him. So see you next time, guys.